So we know that Thanksgiving is a time of thanks and giving. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, in all things, be thankful. But there are times in life where we don't know how, we go through things that are just too painful to reconcile with being thankful. Yet we know that we have a God that strengthens and equips and helps us through. And we wanted to do something special here with an incredible friend of mine, someone that I know all the way from Brooklyn and who's now here in Orlando, which I know that this was totally God orchestrated as well, bringing us back into each other's lives in a new city, for such a time as this. So Tiffany, I want to introduce you to everybody. This is Tiffany. And her story is so remarkable. We've recently had the honor of seeing her walk down the aisle. She's now a bride. She's an incredible mom, an accomplished, successful woman of God. But not many people know the backstory, and not many people know the journey. So we wanted to give you guys an insight to something that was very personal and private in her own life. And we pray that it brings freedom, that it brings hope, and that as people mourn together, that we learn how to rejoice together in even our most painful moments. So, Tiffany, let's start from that moment many years ago this week, where you found yourself a teenager, very difficult upbringing, and tell us a little bit about that season of your life.
So that season in my life, honestly, it was just like a normal season.
Mm-hmm. How old were you?
I was 19, and it was a typical day for me. It was a typical season because all my seasons are growing up before Christ was in my life. Well, before I knew that he was in my life. All my seasons were just the usual drama, in and out, pain, hurt.
Yeah.
Anything positive that came was out of the norm for me.
Wow.
But in that month of November, that year of my life.
How long ago?
19, I'm 30 now.
Wow.
That's
11 years ago.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time, and to know that the pain is still there.
Yeah. Which is important to even add and mention, because so many people, that's how, you live. Mm-hmm. You encounter tragedy, and time passes, but the pain wants to stay.
It's like, I feel like I've went through my life since then. As the days go, as the weeks go, as the months go, like I forget this happened to me. I forget that I had a moment. I forget that I had a traumatic, life-changing experience.
But then this season
and then it comes around.
Yeah.
Every year, like clockwork, literally starting. It's like if my mind and my body prepares itself the weeks coming up into the week, because my mood changes. I notice it. Like, I notice I'm more abrasive. I'm the unloving type of blunt comes out more. And then boom, the week is there, and then the day is there.
Yeah.
But this year it's different, because Thanksgiving is the last Thursday of the month of November. So the day is always different.
Yeah.
this is the first year in a long time that it's day in. It's really, really hitting it close. So the attacks and the dreams, it's been harder this year. The shame and the guilt that comes from that night is like, it's been really hard this year.
So I know this is going to be hard, but walk us through the night. Walk us through where you were, you know, Tiffany, like in your heart, in your relationship. Walk us through that night and the events that followed.
So my childhood was crazy for the most part. But that year, my mother came back into my life. And just like a couple months before. And I had Drew from high school, the guidance counselor. He actually dropped me off at her house.
Wow.
And I remember I was there and I was, you know, Chris and I were together. And I remember, you know, I just missed him and I wanted to see him and I wanted to spend time with him, and we lived separately.
This is your teenage boyfriend?
My teenage boyfriend.
His name happens to be Chris.
His name, And he was living with his uncle at the time. And so I was at my mom's house, which was really new for me because I didn't live with her.
Yeah.
And we were trying, it was one of our, let's try to have a relationship time. So we were, you know, and it just so happened to be in November. I knew I wasn't going to be able to see Chris for Thanksgiving. So I wanted to spend Thanksgiving Eve with him. And a bunch of friends were going out and, you know, young in New York. I mean, I don't know how it is now, but back then it was easy to be underage and get into the clubs. It was very easy. So, you know, we wanted to go out. And I remember telling my mother, like, let me use your car. And she gave me a lot of pushback, but I knew that the pushback was also because, like, she didn't raise me. We didn't have that. Yeah. And her husband, he's like, oh, come on, just give the baby the car. And he's like, you know, she wants to have a good time. She's a good girl. Like, even through everything. Yeah. Just let her take the car. Like, she's a good kid and, you know, let her go have fun. So she gave me the car and I went crazy. Started picking up my friends, like everybody.
Typical teenage behavior, right?
Ended up going out to a club in Long Island City, Queens. And I was with a bunch of friends. And he ended up showing up with a bunch of friends.
Your boyfriend?
Yes, Chris ended up showing up with a bunch of friends. And, you know, the night was so weird, just the way it played out, because we were just there to have a good time.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I thought, the night was good. And then the party was over and we started exiting the club. And, you know, Chris was the president of a car club.
Okay.
We were young. That was big.
Yes, I remember those.
Yes.
You walk by the garages.
Yes.
That are repping their club.
And we all invest and all that stuff. That was us. So he was beyond proud.
How old was Chris?
At
that time?
23.
Yeah.
22, 23. Yeah.
He's the president, you know how.
Yeah.
Feeling himself. Got
Very
a beautiful
much so.
Girl, you know.
Very much so. And you could not tell him anything about his car club. That was the dream. That was the American dream.
Yeah.
So everywhere we went, he always mentioned it. He always tried to invite people like, oh, we're having a trophy
come
party.
out.
Come out.
Yeah.
Come show love all the time. It was so weird because I never seen a club like this either. They had a coat rack section.
Mm-hmm.
And you would, if memory serves me correctly, you'd basically walk through the coat room area to go to the front door.
Oh, that is.
So it was like a hallway and like a like an opening. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
So we were walking through. The majority of his friends had already left by then. Mine's same thing. I literally remember us being with only like 4 people at this point.
Yeah.
And we're walking out and he's just talking to this guy. Oh, I have a car club and you should come and this is what we do. And, you know, they were just hitting it off, laughing. Everything was fine. And they exchanged numbers and everything was good. So, you know, we continue walking out. You know, we're leaving and I start hearing a commotion. You know, being in New York, there's always some type of drama.
Yeah.
So you just kind of ignore it and brush it off. You keep walking. Unless it's like you just walk. So but I'm not thinking that
That's
it's anything.
definitely typical New York.
Exactly. So we're just walking. And I start hearing words exchange. And as I'm going through, this guy just comes out of nowhere and he's like, oh, I'll break your girl's back. I'm from Long Island. Like he said like some slick remark like that.
About you.
To me. And that I can honestly say that was the first night that I've ever seen Chris do something out of the norm. I've always felt safe with him.
Mm-hmm.
My entire time of knowing him, even though I've seen him in altercations before.
Yeah.
But it's weird to say this, but he was wise in the altercations he would get in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like he knew if you were outnumbered, stay quiet, just keep it pushing.
Don't.
Yeah, if I'm with, you know, kids or something, just keep going, take them a different route. Like he always did stuff like that.
Yeah. Had y'all been drinking and stuff at all, or?
I don't think he had been drinking.
Mm-hmm.
If he did, I can honestly say it was maybe 1 or 2 beers or something like that.
So he wasn't, wasn't his character.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, normal Chris would have just been like, I see all these people here. We're going to just walk. But not that night. He said, I don't remember his exact words, what he said back, but I just remember turning around and I remember like seeing him just standing there with his hands up, like what up? Like that was yeah.
Okay.
And next thing you know, what turned into one person making a comment, it was like over 20 people running to him. And
there was 4 of you.
So everybody's running away
from the commotion.
And this is before they even get to him.
Is this still inside of the club?
This is now right outside the entrance door.
Okay.
And he's just standing there. Chris is just standing there with his hands up.
20 people are coming towards
They're just running and he's not moving. He's like literally looking at everybody and just standing there. And I look back because I see people running past me and I just look back and I just see him there. And my homegirl, she's like, come on, and trying to pull me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, his homeboys, they were, you know, doing the same thing. And they all like started going. And I don't know what in me was like, I was just like, no, like, I'm not going to be, like, whatever happens to you, it's going to be us. And, you know, and I think, I know my childhood plays a role into that, but also just growing up in Brooklyn and seeing so many people get jumped.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just not in me to just.
Well, you're loyal.
Yes.
You're a loyal person. And Yeah, I'm like that, so I don't even know the other kind of people, to be honest. I don't understand anyone who wouldn't.
Correct.
But I know that there are plenty of people who wouldn't, right? I mean, we saw it with Jesus himself.
Yeah.
Like they all left.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I get your instinct to stay.
I ran to him, and I remember, one thing that I blame myself so much is I actually threw the first punch. And I know that that's just the enemy playing tricks on me, because at that point, no matter what we did,
You were gonna get jumped.
yeah, no, it doesn't matter. But it was just a thought of,
Which is also, and let me pause and say this. I was also raised, don't let nobody hit you. Like, you hit them first. So I don't know if that's a culture thing or what. But if there's a threat, you defend yourself.
Absolutely.
And which I'm assuming is what, that your instincts kicked in, your reflex. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened.
And it just, I remember him standing there, and I kind of I don't know how I don't know how I did it. Like, I just kind of went in front of him, and I remember pulling him back. And then I remember when I pushed him back, it was right when the first guy was already going like that. And I just, before he could land his, I landed mine's. And he was, I don't know how it's true what they say about adrenaline.
Yeah.
Because
you knocked him out?
He was out. He was out.
Well, if I ever need to get it, I'm just playing. Those days are over, but good to know.
Thank
that
God.
I'll be all right if I hang out with you.
He was just laid out.
Oh, wow.
And then we got bum rushed. Everybody just came from all corners.
I don't know but when you see a fight in baseball and everyone rushes the mound and it's just the pitcher or whoever's there.
Yeah.
And then the whole team just jumps in.
Mm-hmm. That's literally how it was.
Yeah.
And they all just bum rushed us. And
do you even know what's happening? Are you seeing what's happening, or are you just blacked out and you have to defend yourself?
So it was, my whole thought was, honestly, the entire time was, where's Chris?
Well,
where's Chris?
Well, yeah.
I was swinging.
It was you and him, yeah.
So I was swinging on anything and everyone that got next to me. I didn't care who it was. I was just swinging on everyone.
Yeah, you gotta get out of there.
And I'm looking at the same time where is he? That's honestly my only thought was, where's Chris? Stay next to him. If you guys could, I was literally, I remember in my head saying if you stay close enough, then our chances are better, because I honestly jumping in, I didn't realize it was that many people, and it was all guys.
Really?
All guys.
And they were hitting you?
Oh yeah. They after we got bum rushed, both of us got slammed against the gate. And I remember somebody grabbing my throat and just holding me there. And I remember having two people on opposite sides just hitting me in my midsection. And right in that moment, I had locked eyes for a split second with Chris. And they were surrounding him. It was just a bunch of people surrounding him, and he was in the middle. But then they kind of opened up the circle, and they all stood in front of him and were kind of basically walking backwards, so he would walk towards them swinging. So when they did that, I saw that he was getting to the street. So I broke loose of the guys that were holding me. Again, I don't know how all of this happened. Yeah. And I just remember running. There was a car parked there, and I remember running around the car and just grabbing him right when they were coming back again to close the circle. I remember grabbing him and pulling him real hard, and he like both of our backs slammed against the car that was there. And we just like I felt comfortable even in that situation because we were shoulder to shoulder. And I knew that like, okay, we're almost like this is gonna be over. This has got to be over. Like this can't go that long with all these people here. And I just remember like we're again just swinging on everybody, and out of nowhere I hear a female's voice. So she's like cursing me out, and she comes from the side, and this is the only female that it was that you saw, all guys. So she comes from the side and pulls me down. And when she pulled me down, in that moment I heard my friend's voice. And I just heard her screaming, Tiffany. Like I heard her screaming. I just remember the pain, like the fear in her voice. And I remember her screaming my name, and later on I learned to find out that she basically grabbed, I don't know if she grabbed the girl or she grabbed somebody off of me, but then a guy ended up like started punching her in the face, and she was like about to pass out. Like she had to step back. That when I learned that part, I had so much hatred for her, because I'm like, why didn't you, like, maybe if you stood a little bit longer. But at the same time, like, that's hard. So when that happened, I was kind of like off to the side. It was like in that moment that I felt like a really sharp pain in my back. And like, it was just like a quick, just like a quick pain.
Yeah.
And my reflexes, I turned around and I just kept hitting people, and I couldn't see Chris. And then the guy, that I had knocked out in the beginning of the fight, that was the first time I saw him again. And I saw him with a knife in his hand. And I remember trying to like grab Chris again to pull him back. And I believe that he saw it also, because not once when I was fighting with him or pulling him back did he like, I don't know how to say it. Like, I feel like it was like an understand, like he knew it was me that was pulling him.
Gotcha.
And
he wasn't fighting you.
No.
Yeah.
But in that moment when I pulled him back, I had pulled him like to like cover him. And he took his hand and slammed me like to the side. So like, I feel like he saw it coming. And then I just remember in that moment, we fell to the floor. And I remember him being on top of me. And we were on the floor, and I remember him just saying like, he was just like, hold on. Like, it's almost done. Just like, hold on. And I was yelling at him. Like, I was so mad. Like, get up. Like, get off of me. Like, just get up and keep fighting. And he wouldn't. He's like, it's almost done. Like, just hold on. And the pressure from the kicks, they were getting harder and harder. And then I heard the police sirens. So the pressure got light.
Yeah.
So
everyone was now looking.
They're like scattering.
Yeah.
So I just remember jumping up And like I jumped up and was just like swinging. Like I wasn't hitting anything. Like they were already out.
You're in trauma right now.
But I just get up and I'm swinging and I see cop cars pull up really fast. And everybody's like running and I'm yelling at the cops. They're up there. They're going over, like pointing where I see them going.
Yeah.
And the cops left. Like they booked it. Like they were running
to go
after everybody.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that Chris didn't get up with me. So, like, his friend, at that point, his friend came back. Just one of his friends came back. And he, like, helped him up. And, you know, he helped him up and he was leaning against the car. And he was just like coughing, and like just like a little bit of blood came out, and I was touching his mouth, and I just touched it. I was like, you're fine, and I'm just like wiping him off. And he fell to the floor, like he couldn't hold himself up, and he fell down to the ground. And then the paramedics came and they kind of like pushed me off of him, but I wasn't having it. So like I went back and they were ripping his shirt open and I just saw blood like gushing everywhere. So I was just holding him and I was holding his face, and he was talking to me and he was just saying how I was his fighter, that I was his soldier, and that he loves me and like all this stuff. And I was telling him, I was like, just hold on, like you're good, like you're straight, like nothing's gonna happen, you're good. And then I don't know who did it, but I don't know if it was a police officer or if it was his homeboy. They kind of like lifted me up and took me off of him so the paramedics could start working. And I started feeling a heart, like a panic attack.
Yeah, anxiety.
And so I couldn't breathe, and I was like trying to breathe, and like he grabbed my face and he was like, I need you to breathe. I need you to breathe. And when he said that, I noticed that the cops were lining people up against the gate. And there was like one girl, she was on the floor, and like it was the girl who jumped in the fight. She was on the floor and she was just sitting there crying, and her friend was holding her. And like they're all like a bunch of, and it was just those two females, and then like all these guys were sitting there. And this one guy, which is the first one that I saw, he was laughing. Like he was just sitting there laughing. Like the whole thing was a game. And I just sat there and I looked at the cop. I was like, he did it. He effing did it. And like I was so livid that I ran to him and I started like kicking him in his face, and they all like pulled me off of him. I'm just like, he did it. Like he's the one. And they were like, we have to take him to the emergency room. So I'm not caring about any. I'm like, I need to follow this car.
Yeah.
I couldn't find my bag. They took my bag. Like in the midst of all that, they rob us too.
Oh my gosh.
So not even worried about, totally forgot that I just got back into my mother's life, and we just started, I have her car and all this stuff. So I tell my friend, I'm like, where's your car? Like, get in the car. I'm like, we couldn't find the hospital, so he lost the ambulance.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking I'm getting a panic attack because I'm like, where the hell's Chris? Like, I have to be with him.
Yeah.
And I started feeling cold, like a coldness just come over my whole back. So my homegirl was in the back seat, and I was like, there's something on my back. And I started remembering right then and there that I felt a sharp pain in my back. So she starts ripping my shirt open in his car. And she was like, I don't know where it's coming from, but blood is coming from everywhere.
Wow.
And she started screaming, I think you got stabbed. And right then and there, he pulls into the emergency room. And he just like left the car there, and he walks around the other side of the car. And as soon as he opened the door and I tried to stand out, I just remember falling. And he like carried me, like he picked me up and he ran inside holding me and everything. And I remember him screaming for help, and the doctors came and they just took me and, you know, they undressed me to check if there was like anything else.
Yeah.
And they put me in the room with Chris.
What?
So I remember looking to the side and seeing like a whole bunch of people just like working on him. And I remember seeing like these big tables just coming in and out with like a whole bunch of blood bags and all that stuff. And I kept asking like, is he okay? Is he okay? Is he okay? So they like they put like a curtain to cover it. And then they took me out the room. And I kept asking, where's Chris? Like, is he okay? Where's Chris?
Did you know at this point what happened to you yet? Did anyone tell you?
I knew. I had already known, but I think because I was so focused on him that I wasn't worried about it.
So you were stabbed?
Yes, across my back with a butterfly knife. So I don't even know how, but they managed to, they like up higher, they went in and sliced it down. So I had to get staples in my back and all that stuff, and took a long time of healing. Even to this day, I get pain. So I remember they put the staples in, and they told me like, okay, we're going to give you medicine so you can relax and make sure you don't get an infection and calm down, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And they said, as soon as we know something, we'll tell you. But we're doing everything we can. And they wouldn't give me no information. My mother just kind of sat there. I don't think she really knew how to
deal with that.
I mean, no, I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
But
then also she hasn't been in your life. So
not
how
consistent.
Do you yeah, well, and that moment, I mean, she had just came back in. She doesn't probably even know your relationships or even with your guardian. Like, you know,
well,
all of that.
So I ended up I didn't realize in that moment. Mm-hmm. I also didn't know the full details.
Everything that was happening.
But my mother actually experienced something similar, in the sense of she was pregnant with my brother at the same age, and his father got shot in the head while she was pregnant. Wow. And she was around the same age.
She's probably reliving.
So the emotional, so the emotional trauma that comes with that, she could relate to me up until an extent.
Yeah, of course.
Because of her situation. Wow. So I think she kind of just shut down altogether. And then, you know, I know that seeing Sontia there, and she's just like, you know, my godmother, basically. And she's handling everything. Yeah. And then my actual mom's here. I know that took a toll on her as well. We're just sitting there, and then the doctor walks in, and like I remember he opened the curtain, and all he did was walk up to me, and he just like looked at me, and that look, he didn't even have to say anything. And he didn't say anything. I just started screaming. And I told him, I was like, I have to see him. Like, I have to see him right now. And they were like, no. And I looked at him and I was like, I have to see him. And he goes, like, I remember he turned to the nurse and he was like, take her. So I couldn't get out of the bed. So I just remember they wheeled my bed into another room, and he was just laying there with the blanket over him. And
they put my bed like as close to his as they can, and they took the cover off. And I just remember like just looking at him and fixing his hair because it was like all in his face. And like I just remember telling him that I loved him and that I would marry him because that's what he asked me earlier.
Wow.
And like I don't know how that moment happened, like, because the next thing you know, like I was just like leaning on him and I was taking out like the hair from his face, and they was like, you know, you have to get out of the room now, like we have to take you out of the room. So they took me back out, and like once that happened, the doctor was like, she absolutely cannot leave here because my heart rate wouldn't go down. So they kept me there, and the cops were coming in and they were asking questions. So then I was dealing with that, and then none of my friends came except for one friend, which is my childhood best friend, Maria. I remember she walked in and like she just started crying so hard. And I was telling her, like I was trying to tell her like that I tried so hard, like I fought so hard. And he just didn't make it. And then I remember finally when they let me out the hospital, I was like, I'm going straight to the police station. Like, I don't care. And answered anything and everything. And I didn't want to forget nothing. So I was like, I need to tell you now. Like, I need to get this out now. And like the detectives, they were so like they were helpful through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just got worse from there. Like, I thought that was gonna be the worst of it. You know, people handle stuff like this differently.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that was a thing. I had to learn to forgive, and
you suffer this tragedy and you're learning how to process for yourself even what's happening or why something like this happens. And are you feeling guilty, or did the feelings of guilt intensify once you realized that the people that loved him were also looking at you instead of at what really happened?
It was all of that. It was, if you fought harder, he would have still been here. If you didn't throw the first punch, maybe it wouldn't have been as bad. If you didn't go out that night, you were the one who wanted to hang out that night. Yeah. Then, you know, it was that, and then it was, I don't know how, but this was when MySpace was big.
Yeah.
And a couple people actually went on MySpace and
on social media
and were writing their version of the story of what happened. So I heard a whole bunch of stories of that night. I heard that supposedly we both died. I heard that we both died. I heard that we were on a highway and we got jumped on the highway. Like, I heard so many different stories. I just shut down. I didn't have it in me to go to anybody, because especially being from Brooklyn, you're taught that those who have trust and loyalty with you, they're there till the end. And if they're not, then you drop it. And now coming to that night, nobody was there for me.
You felt alone.
So, and
betrayed by the world, on top of losing the person that you loved.
Yes. So I just shut down. Like, nobody could get a hold of me. I was just done with everybody.
Yeah.
I didn't want to speak with anybody.
Which doesn't help either, because which I think when you are grieving, I think it's a natural tendency as well, though, to go into a cocoon or a little hole, and because you don't know how to process what just happened, and so, and let's be real, people say the stupidest things during times of grief. They don't know what to say, and most of the time they say the stupidest thing possible, and it's really, it just doesn't help.
Or when they say, I know how you feel. Like, and it's like, you don't, in that moment, it's such a vulnerable place, and it's a place that I shut off. Yeah. I've just grown to know how to, don't let nobody see this in you.
Yeah.
And so when I would even get that, I'm like, how do you know how I feel? Like, yes, I understand death is death and loss is loss, but the steps to get to that point are all different.
It's different, unique.
You don't know. My only thing that I regret in that moment of shutting down was not being, it was never my thought to say, let me try to get a hold of his family. And it hurts me to even know, because like, now that I'm a mom, like I sit there and I think of my son, and I think of my daughter, and I'm like, I would want to know the instant something happens. But, and if I take away that I didn't have a good relationship with his side of the family.
Yeah. And you guys are young.
We were young. It's not like
marriage. Like, when you're a teenager and in love, that it's not like when you get older and so I get
like it. Now it's like
it's different. Your families integrate. When you're a teenager, it's like you guys are doing teenage things.
We didn't care. Yeah. We didn't think about anybody but us. So it just wasn't a thought. And like, and it honestly, it hurts me knowing that she found out, like his family, his mom found out really in depth and in detail what happened when we got to the courtroom.
Wow.
And that was a couple years. I battle with that, because I'm like, well, if she didn't do this, and if I didn't go through this, like, when I tell you I went through hell after that, like, I almost got jumped at his funeral.
Oh my gosh.
Staples and all in my back. His little sister was the only one that was there for me in this time.
You couldn't grieve in that moment because you were again in another battle.
And that was right after everything that happened.
A couple, how, we know how the process
like is. I remember being able to see him. I don't remember who, but somebody that I knew was friends with the girl that worked at the funeral.
Wow.
And they snuck me in the next day. And right before they came to take him. And I remember like having my moment there with him. And I had that. And I don't know. I went to his grave once, and I don't even know where he's buried. Like, I don't even remember how I got there or anything. Because after all that happened and just the back and forth and then getting into so much drama, but then like so much other stuff. And then I just remember one day getting a phone call, and they're like I ended up getting the district attorney, like they reached out to me and they were like, we're gonna take care of everything and all this stuff. And she's like, but you gotta lay low or get out of New York.
Wow.
Like, until we could see this thing through. And I mean, at that point, I didn't even care. Like, it was like everywhere I turned, I saw Chris. Everywhere I walked, I saw Chris.
I was going to say that, because it is harder sometimes to stay because you're reliving moments. And maybe it was grace, that you had to get out, in a sense, to not constantly be replaying.
Yeah.
And even though I'm sure it happened,
Yeah.
You know.
But I got careless. It was to the point that like I knew I had problems at that point. People were telling me like, oh, you know, we were told if like I actually had friends that cut me off that said, I heard that if I get seen with you, I'm getting a slice across my face.
Wow.
So people didn't hang out with me. I literally only had 3 people that were with me, and then that turned down into just 2 people that were with me, and then that turned down into just 1 person that was with me. And then it just got stupid at that point. Yeah. Like I just was
then also,
not knowing.
You're probably not processing anything.
No.
Everything is just bottling up and it's boiling over. You're having, you know, it's an overflow of what's not being
Correct.
dealt with or felt or processed on the inside, you know?
And I couldn't, who was I going to talk to?
Yeah.
I didn't.
And at this point, you don't have God.
No.
You don't. And if anything, if you're thinking, well, if there is a God.
I hated and like it's.
Talk to us about that, because I think people are afraid to be honest with the process, right? And I want you to help them know there is a process. And sometimes you have to go through the process and feel what you genuinely feel.
So I knew there was a God. I remember being young, going to church, but it was Spanish Pentecostal church. So it's that abusive God that you learn about. It's hard. Legalism. Yes, it's hard because the God that I knew of from a young age, it wasn't a run into my arms. No, it was very harsh.
Punishing. Old Testament.
Very Old Testament style. And I didn't follow, you know, I didn't follow him. I didn't believe. It was just like, why would I want to follow somebody who is going to punish me every second of the day? So,
and then this happens.
And, you know, and on top of this, everything else in my life, I'm just like
feeling abandoned, not feeling you have
being
the
in and
family
out,
structure that you
never
need.
Having a stable home, in and out of the streets. Like, I'm like, suffering, and now this, like, so that wasn't good enough. And, you know, so I just, like, I literally sat there and I was like, there's no way in hell there's something up there that loves me. Absolutely impossible. You couldn't tell me that there was. Because if that's the case, then you want me to follow something that's looking down on me, that watched me get physically, emotionally abused in my childhood, in and out, to not have a stable home, to not have parents, to not have anything. And then the one thing finally that she gets, you just rip it out. There's no way. And it was in that moment that I was like, you know, I secretly said, I didn't like openly say it, but in my heart, I was like, I'm gonna hate you. Like, that was my mission.
Wow.
And I did that. I turned into a crazy pothead. Didn't want to think about him. People would tell me, God's with you. No, you can have your God. I would tell people just like that. Because you couldn't tell me. Like, you just couldn't tell me. Nothing you was going to tell me was going to get through me. And then I was always high. And then I wanted to kill myself, and I tried.
Which is probably one of your coping mechanisms.
Yes.
To just smoke a blunt, not really
get through it.
Just, you know, just chill and
correct.
Not feel.
Because that was my only way out. And you know, it's crazy because I now know that was all manipulation and it was a lie. Because in those moments, I literally sat there and felt like nothing you can tell me was gonna change anything, because I was in a happy place.
Yeah. And the enemy loves
to
do things like that. He's like, okay, she's not feeling, so she's stuck in this awful
I shut
place.
down.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just go to Florida. Like, again, Florida's right there. I could drive there. I could come right back. I was like, okay.
So you
Florida
come
it
to
is.
Florida, you hide out kind of, or get away from
Nobody knew I was here.
And all of this goes to trial. It's on the newspapers, right? Things like that.
Yep. It's going big. I get out here, and I remember my grandmother all the time. I'm praying for you. And I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't want to hear it. Out here, just thinking I'm living the life because I've put it behind me, and it's, I'm trying to just move forward, not be in the pain, and still sitting there. There's no God. Then get to the point of, now I got to go back to New York because trial started. And again, it was like, I want to say it was like 2 to 3 years after it happened that it finally got to trial.
Wow. So regardless of you trying to move on or push past or
it was
whatever,
still there.
It's still lingering. And then not to mention it happened during the holidays. So it's always going to reopen.
Mm-hmm. The trial experience, they saved me for last so I could just be in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And, that happened. And that was the first time I saw
his family.
His family and the other sides.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to take you off a little bit. You haven't shared any of this. Why?
I think it's so many things. I have the wall, so I'm like, I can't let people see me. So there's that. It comes into, again, the guilt and the shame. Then it comes into, I don't need people to sit there and feel bad for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we all go through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some stories are worse than others, yes, but this doesn't matter. I don't need that, and I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I honestly couldn't, I feel like it's just hitting me now that I couldn't openly say it, because then if I say it openly, on top of, I have to have the right person who I feel comfortable to talk to, that I can trust, because it's hard for me to trust.
Yeah, after everything.
So
your whole life.
And I've said like little things, like I'll say tiny things like, yes, I got jumped and stabbed in New York, story done.
Yeah.
But the way like I have now with you, never.
Letting yourself feel it or relive it.
But then it's like then that comes back to me, that it's me admitting that I'm wrong. In the sense of, all my life, from the moment it happened, I hated people. I hated God. I hated myself. And it's now saying, okay, you were wrong for those things, because it wasn't your fault.
It wasn't.
And you are important. And God does love you. And He's always been there. And I think that admitting that I'm wrong, that for all these years, that's what I thought, I think that breaks me more.
You've matured. When we look at people in their growth process, we don't criticize them because they're growing. We celebrate them when they grow. And that's what's happening.
Yeah. I just started within the last, I want to say last 2 years, not blaming the Lord so much. And it was only because, thank God for pushers in the church. I tell you that because my spiritual father couldn't stand him. Did not like him. He kept pushing for me. And I'm like, what do you want? Like, no. And he would keep on. And I remember one day, like, I believe that you have days where you're marked by the Lord. Mm. And I feel like this was one of my days. And he told me, you're going to pray for somebody. And I was like, no. And this is me just officially, you know, because really quickly, like,
yeah, tell us that.
I found a church.
Eventually you do come to God. So
I do.
The hatred of God must shit. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, we're in the journey with you. We're following your journey.
Court was over. Everything was done. Yeah. Everybody officially. Justice was served.
Amen. Praise God.
I come back over here and I'm like, okay, something's got to change. Like, I have a child now and I'm officially living in in Florida now because I'm like, I can't go back. Yeah. There's nothing there for me.
You have a child.
And I'm thinking about him. Like, I'm scared for him. So I'm like, I'm staying here. So I remember driving one day and I'm listening to the radio and I remember like my grandmother would keep praying for me on the phone, and little by little, as the years went and the days went, I started getting like, just wondering like, okay, if you really love me, then why? So instead of it, like it before was a statement.
Yeah. And also you weren't even open.
No.
To that. It's just like, no. Get away with
Correct.
From me with that.
But then she, you know, I think her continuously doing that,
let me tell you,
it planted the seed.
Consistency
is key.
Really has, I know that consistency has helped influence so many people in my family.
Yeah.
It took 12 years before some of them were even open to me sharing God with them.
Wow.
And it was because of my consistency. It was nothing else but that.
Yeah. You know, and I've learned that even when people don't believe you, because you're speaking it in the air, it's going in their ears. Whether they're shutting you out or not, it's still going in there and the seed is getting planted.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's what she did. And so my statements of, why did you do this? You did this. I know you did this. Now became questions. And that was, for me, that was the first step.
Yeah, that's big.
And because without knowing, my questions made me curious.
Wow. I'm thanking God for how he rescues. Because, you know, if I look at, if just hearing your life, you know, you feel the pain, you know, and just how hard, and you're like, oh God, you know, so much pain. And then you just see how God is like, she's mine though. Like, he didn't let you leave.
Yeah.
He couldn't let you leave. Like the warrior that was being molded all these years.
Yeah.
It was time now for you to step into your call. You know, the battles,
I believe it.
The training and all that it
is for something bigger.
Absolutely.
And I truly believe that, because I mean, don't get me wrong, it didn't change overnight.
I was going to ask you, how does it shift from the hatred, even though you're feeling the supernatural still, and you know, so now you're like, okay, well, obviously God, there is some God thing happening.
There's something going on.
Yeah, so, okay, you're curious and all that, but still there's a unforgiveness. There's this, okay, God, well, now I understand you are there. You're real. The preacher's now, he's saying you are love and you love and you rescue and redeem and all these beautiful words, but why did you take him? There's still that thought.
Yeah. And that definitely stood. It didn't leave. Yeah.
the only thing, just being real, the only thing that changed for me from that day moving forward, the attacks started to slowly, they digressed and they left. Yes. But it was something with the Lord specifically, like this unspoken thing that unless I get an answer, my heart was still set.
Of course.
So I was like, and I'm, I could be stubborn. So it was like, no.
Yeah. And you're a fighter. I get it.
It just all came naturally.
I get it.
And I started, slowly started praying, then I thought, I was like, well, you know what, maybe I should become a part of like the dance ministry. And I became a part of the dance ministry and started getting really involved, and nothing changed for me.
Yeah.
And I started feeling like a hypocrite.
And then you're not sharing either.
No,
so
I'm not.
She's not unburdening herself.
No.
That's what's happening. You're not unburdening either. So it's tucked away in this corner, in this compartment. So although other doors are being opened,
that was still there.
There's a room he's not allowed in because you can't trust him with that room.
Correct. And I didn't realize that I never understood that he is such a gentleman.
Absolutely.
That he will only go as far as you allow it. And I never got that. And I would just be like, yeah, we can touch base on everything, but back up when you get over here.
Yeah.
And you weren't, and and I would have conversations with my spiritual mom, and like she would pull teeth. Oh, speak, say it, do it, this, that. And I'm like, you're crazy. Like, you bugging, not doing it. But she's also from Brooklyn, so she would push. Like, she wasn't stopping, and we kept on, and we would go back and forth, and just all these spiritual things started happening, good and bad. And it was a lot. So I started taking that and like, I would literally say, I hate you. Why are you showing me this?
Wow.
Why am I getting this? Wow. Like, that makes no sense. Because again, my thought is also, I'm a mom now. I dare my son tell me, I hate you.
Yeah.
We ain't doing that. So I'm like,
you're not going to reward him at all.
Absolutely not. Oh no, everything's out the door. And so I'm also, but I'm thinking in the mindset, I can't, you cannot think we could never fathom the thought process of the Lord. And that's where I was.
And how good he is despite us.
Exactly. And that's where I was. I was like, oh, well, now I was taking my own thoughts, my perception on everything. And like, well, if I wouldn't do it for my son, why would you do it for me? Like, there's no way, like, it's impossible.
Wow.
And that continued, and still didn't do Thanksgiving. I wouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving. I wouldn't do anything. And then, rotated churches because I was all over the place.
Most Christians, or most people, forget Christians, most humans don't realize there has to be an exchange.
Yes.
Like you said, he is a gentleman. He's not going to bum rush. Like if it was me, I'm like, get up out of here. Give me that. Because I know it's no good for you. You know?
He won't.
But he won't. And you know what? I'm thankful for it. Because the process, the act of the process, it's painful as heck.
Yeah.
But the growth that comes from it, the closeness that comes as a result of processing your darkest, deepest pains.
Yeah.
And we're all still in our process.
Yeah.
Right? It's there's always another layer. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do believe that, maybe I'm a masochist, I don't know, because my friends are like, y'all are nuts. I hate when God wants me to go through this. I don't know why, but I think there's so much beauty in the process because of the transformation. So like, if you're stomping on grapes, right, if I'm the grape, that's super painful. But when I'm transformed into that fine wine, that's what comes through it.
You have to learn how to love the journey through it.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But
and you can't get over something.
No.
You have to get through it.
Correct.
And God is the one.
And honestly, that was my fear. Mm-hmm. Like, wow. How dare I be blessed if I'm so blessed to have a life, to continue breathing? You know, because one thing that a lot of people, like even in all the newspaper articles, you know, they're very brief. They don't know the details, so they just say whatever they say.
They summarize it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, an important detail was that if a half inch deeper for me, I wouldn't have made it. My chances would have been slim to none.
Wow.
So I would sit there and, you know, and they even left out, like there's literally only one newspaper article where they talk about me getting stabbed. So I would sit there and say, a half inch deeper with me, I wouldn't have made it. Why are you blessing me? Like, why am I still here?
Yeah.
So who am I to get over this?
Wow.
Like, how rude and disrespectful of me.
Yeah, so you almost feel like, you know, keeping it is a way of honoring it.
That's where my mind was. Like it would be, I would be a disgrace
That's
if I...
you keeping the memory alive.
Yes. And so, you know, there's that too that took a toll on me. And then, you know, then now I'm at Remnant Christian Center.
Yeah.
And so at Majestic Life, I still have my spiritual mom there.
Yeah.
Which she went through hell and back with me all the way. And
it's
then
not easy.
It's
not easy doing life with people, period.
Correct.
But especially when you're laboring and praying for somebody to process or unveil something, and you know that it's keeping them from getting to that place.
And the thing is, she still didn't, like, I truly believe that you're meant, like, people are meant for certain things. Like, the Lord has placed certain people in your life for certain things.
You're right.
I get to RCC, and at the time, he wasn't my, you know, him and his wife were not my spiritual parents at the time. But I just knew that there was this man in there that I couldn't stand. And it was him. And I'm like, ugh, like, he's also from New York though. So, and it's so crazy because we're so much alike, but I did not like him. And he kept pushing and he kept pushing and he kept pushing. And this is going on 2 years ago. Yeah, actually it is 2 years ago. We're at church and he's like, oh, you're going to come pray. And it's so crazy that in the midst of, you know, now that I think about it, it's extremely crazy that for somebody who doesn't believe in God at the time and all that, I surely had enough respect to have a fear of him, which is so crazy. Because I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, I'm done for. Like, I don't know what's about to come into my life. And I remember looking at her. And in that moment, I felt how she hated God.
Wow.
Like, I literally felt it. And I felt her blaming him. And she was, you know, I don't know fully what happened with her situation, but I know, like, her boyfriend was, like, in a really bad, like, motorcycle accident, like, lost a leg and stuff like that.
Wow.
So I know she was broken. And I felt the hatred.
Wow.
And with the little bit that I was learning about the Lord, that hurt me. Like, when I felt what she felt, I just instantly, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how can somebody hate somebody so passionately? And I instantly felt like a hypocrite because that was me. And so I remember,
felt a glimpse of what you had felt.
And I just, like, I looked at her, and in that moment, and that was one of the first times that I could tell the Holy Spirit was talking to me. And I knew for a fact that that's what it was, because I remember him saying, I still love you and you hated me. And I just looked at her and I was like, stop blaming God. And as soon, like, her face was all like with the attitude and everything. As soon as I said that, like, it was like something just came over her face. She just like started screaming, crying.
She knew it was God.
And I just like, she like fell down and she was hugging me tight. And I was just telling her, like, I was talking in her ear. I was like, I know that you're hurt, but don't hate the Lord, because he's never left you. He was there for you in that moment. He's there for you after. And like, I was just saying that. And when I was saying it to her, I was like it was hitting, like if he was telling me, like I was there in that moment. And like, I felt in that moment that not only was he speaking to her, but he was speaking to me and telling me, like, you're alive because I was there in that moment. Yeah. You're here because I was there in that moment. Yeah. And like, I just felt that so heavy. And then I felt horrible. I was like, I'm so, like, when everything left, I was wrecked all service. I couldn't pay attention. I was just crying the whole time. And then I get in the car and I'm like, I just felt the pain. Like, and I was doing that. Like, if my son hated me like this, like, what would be the reason of me being alive? Because I do everything that I do for my child. Yeah. And I couldn't picture that. And I'm just like, I was so sorry that I felt that way. And I started telling the Lord, like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know any better. Please forgive me. Mm-hmm. And it was in that moment that I felt like a big burden, like, lift off of me. Mm-hmm. And my hatred turned into, like, it wasn't a full done, hatred's gone. It was more like, I'm hurt still. Mm. And I still have questions. And I still want answers. Yeah. But I don't hate you. Yeah. There was no more. There hasn't been any nightmares. There hasn't been anything. Wow. Until this year. Now again.
This month.
And I didn't realize that this year it's more closer to the actual day.
Yeah. So your life is changing too. You're in another phase of your transition. You're now married, stepping into now not only your destiny as a Christian, but your purpose in service to God, and how you mentor others, and how you sharing the pain that you've been through, even through this, and how that's going to translate to others and help them find hope and healing and strength. Just knowing, if she went through this, I can also find myself in that place where I don't blame God, and where I can trust God, and where I can forgive myself. And this is where you are.
Yeah.
And the enemy's threatened, of course.
See, and I feel like now it's more, okay, so she's not hating or blaming God anymore, but she's got to blame herself.
Yes. And this is it's important. I'm writing a book, and I literally just wrote this. All of our stories are different. They're so unique and they're so different. But the enemy's plan and tactic is always the same.
Yes.
And he tries different steps. And when he can't get us to, feel fear or turn on God or be distracted, then he wants us to look on the inside. Correct. And start to feel, insecure, and robs us of our own identity and our own thing. And and that's the process. That's the process of living.
Yeah.
And having to constantly identify the devil's lies and his tricks and redirect, with God's word and his truth. And, I wanted to be here with you for this, because I wanted you to share, and I wanted you to let people into this place that you've been through, and show the reality of a real person living through tragedy, working out their salvation with God. And that can still say, God, I'm thankful.
Yeah. It took a long time. If I knew then what I know now, it would have changed like this. But it's crazy to say that I am grateful that it took that time, because I've learned so much. I know it's weird, because before I was at the point of, you can't tell me that there's a God. Now it's like, you can't tell me that there's not a God. like what? Like, I can tell you all the reasons why there is. Like, just the fact that we're talking shows me that there's a God. And, and then it's like, it's honestly, it's dying to yourself daily. And that's where I'm at now, because now it's, it's like, I think I mentioned it to you before, I now listen to songs that before I would listen to songs and sing songs that were blaming the Lord. And just 3 days ago, I'm listening to the same songs that I did. And I'm now, instead of listening to the songs in agreement, I'm literally apologizing for every word that I said before. And I've never, ever done that. But it's weighing more on me now of, well, you're not good enough. And I caught myself asking somebody. I actually caught myself asking 3 people in the past 2 weeks alone, do you feel safe with me?
Wow.
And I started questioning myself. And I'm like, okay, we're not going to do this. Like, we're not going to do this, because I know who I am. I know how strong I am. I know what I'm capable of. I know whose I am.
Amen.
And I was literally have to tell myself that I've never been able to honor the person that Chris was.
Yeah.
Because I thought honoring him was hold it, keep it tight. We're not like, you can hold on to his memory. Like, and I didn't even realize, like, I'm holding on to the worst memory.
Yeah.
When I had so many amazing memories that I could share. And I'm holding on to that because I'm just thinking, how dare you not? How can I not?
If you felt like you would be betraying.
If I didn't speak about that, or if I didn't hold that. So, and then thank God that I have a husband that is, it's a double-edged sword, because he's more he's in touch with his emotional side. It takes me time to get there. Yeah. He's like on an instant. Yeah. And,
that's by design. God.
Oh, absolutely.
Put that together.
Absolutely. And, I'm just so blessed that if it was anybody else, my last relationship, it wouldn't last, because they would literally tell me, oh, I know if Chris was alive, you wouldn't be here with me.
Wow.
And I could never speak about him. I could never talk about him, because there was like a jealous, like, he's dead. And there's a war between a man and a man who's no longer here. And my husband, whose name happens to be Chris also, he's the opposite. He's like, tell me about him.
Beautiful.
Tell me about a memory. Tell me about a time. Tell me anything. Show me pictures.
That's great.
Like, that's how he is.
Yeah.
And so, like, for the first time this year, I can actually, honor Chris with who he was when he was here. And the loving person, the loyal person, the fighter. Like, he was the warrior. He was all these amazing things that so many people never got to experience. And so I'm like, just ready to do that.
And the encourager.
Yes.
Even with the last words that he had on this earth, he used them to encourage you.
And I'm like, I'm going to do that. I can't, this was definitely the most traumatic thing I've ever been through in my life. But I'm tired of letting the enemy use something of mine to
Against
throw it back
you.
at me.
All right. That's right.
So
It ends.
I'm
Here.
done. Like, can't do it no more.
That's right. And you know, we started this whole thing with the scripture that says in all things, right? Give thanks. And you know, we hear tragedy and we sympathize and we feel it, but I thank God that He gave Chris you. He trusted that life with you before he left. And I thank God that He never let go of you in the midst of it, that He never abandoned you despite others abandoning you, that inch that the enemy wanted to take, He didn't allow him to. And I thank God that He trusted you with this. Because so many people will be transformed and strengthened because of the war that you had to endure. And that's the way you take back this narrative.
You know, it's true. And I just want people to know that there is definitely a better side on every situation, even though in the midst of it you don't see it and you think it's impossible, but it's already there, because the Lord knows our story. He knows the front and the end.
Yeah.
So no matter what, our ending is already set and the story is there. So, you know, it's just, we have to be mindful that there are people that have a hard time on the holidays. And just keep them in prayer, because for some people, holidays are the best time of year. And then for others, it's really hard. And just keeping them in prayer and just staying positive, which is, it sounds like a cliche and it's hard to say, but I've actually been through it. And I can say that there is a way out.
Amen.
So it's just a lot of constant prayer, constant, you know, honestly, just telling yourself you're not going to listen to those voices.
Yeah.
You got to shut that out.
And Tiff, I thank you so much for sharing, because I know this wasn't easy. I know that
I've been getting hot this whole time thinking about like just talking.
But I know that God ordained this moment because He's building that foundation new. You know, and it's already, the bricks are being laid. And this room of the house needed to be opened so that God could take it all.
Yeah.
And then His presence could dwell in that place. And I know that that's why this year felt different. So many things have already changed for you this year. And I know that that's also why this year felt different. And, you know, we honor your Chris, your first Chris. And look how God is. That He sent you a man of God to help you process and to love you through.
Yeah.
And I thank God. There's so much to thank God for, even in the pain.